What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo MLB Strategy Show. I'm Dave Loughran. With me, Jake Hari. Jake, this is the first MLB show I believe we've done together all year.
Yeah, we did the prior to the season
Prepper show. Yeah.
The prep shows. Yeah. But that's about it. So this is pretty exciting. How's your season been going so far?
Not bad, man. Not bad. A lot of betting too. I never really got super heavy into baseball betting, but now that it's just so accessible everywhere, it's been a whole lot more fun to do that as well. Gets frustrating though, because errors can change the course of everything. And of course, the Phillies are just a trash team, which doesn't make things nearly as good. But at the same time, all in all, we're in the black. How about you? As good as Alex Baker?
Not quite that good. It's been okay. Different on different sites. I think I've kind of struggled on DraftKings, and then FanDuel have been okay, and then some of the smaller sites have been pretty good on. So overall, a little bit uneven. But I've been playing a lot of NHL. I haven't been focused as much on baseball. But there's no NHL today, so I'm all in playing some MLB today.
I've been loving this hockey restart. Don't worry, everybody. Welcome. Happy to have you with us. We're going to get into that in just a second, but. As a 4-for-4 Philly guy, I've got to say, with all my teams sucking and Simmons and Embiid being down with injuries, looking like one won't return at all, it has been a pure pleasure to see the Flyers capture that 1 seed, knock off the Bruins, the Caps, and the Tampa Bay Lightning in 3 consecutive games. They look good, man.
Yeah, they're scary. They were red hot. Going into the break, like the long layoff, the 4.5-month layoff. And then they just apparently just never kind of doused those flames. Like they're just crushing everyone. Really 3 really good teams they just ran through. So they're pretty scary.
All right. You want to jump into this? We've got 9 games to hit on.
Let's do it.
FanDuel, DraftKings, SuperDraft. Well, FanDuel and DraftKings all with the same start time, 7 p.m. or 7:10 p.m. Eastern time. We kick it off with the White Sox and with the Detroit Tigers. So we've got a starter and long reliever situation here. Michael Fulmer looking like he's going to be the opener. And then your probable long guy. I still preferred when DraftKings didn't have this, when they didn't show you, because it felt like it gave you a little bit of an edge. Daniel Norris here looking like he'll get the ball to go, hopefully a few innings into this game. He's pitched an inning and 2/3. That's all he's pitched this year. Coughed up 2 runs, didn't get a single strikeout. So in his one performance, the lefty has struggled a bit. But I guess we can start with Dallas Keuchel in his inaugural season with the Chicago White Sox. He had a fantastic start against Milwaukee. And I specifically remember saying, well, I don't want to pick on Dallas Keuchel, but I don't really have much interest in rostering this guy because he very rarely gets the strikeout numbers you need. Well, I ate my words on that. 7 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts for Keuchel against the Milwaukee Brewers, nonetheless. What do you see for him against the Detroit team today that is striking out at a monumental clip to start the season? To be fair, it is very early in the year, but they're striking out at a 30% clip overall, less against left-handers, but still a team that's going to swing and miss a lot.
Yeah, I think against lefties, they're pretty much middle of the pack. It's only 120 plate appearances, but just under 23%. And then we've talked about Keuchel basically since we've done shows together. He just doesn't get the strikeout numbers. He has the games where he'll get 7-8 strikeouts, and he had one last game. It was a phenomenal start. He was missing it wasn't like he was just getting called third strikes and stuff like that. He had a 15.5 swing strike percentage. So he can do that every once in a while, but he's got a 16% K rate against righties going back to the start of last season, and he's going to get 9 of them here. So 7,800, I still think his upside is capped. Maybe he'll make me eat my words like he did to you last start, but I'm not very interested in Keuchel. And on the other side, the bats too, not really interested in those guys because Keuchel is still a decent real life pitcher.
Yeah, and then on the other side, there's really not much you can do here with Fulmer and Norris. not having any real inkling of how far Norris is going to go. And even if he did, this is a White Sox offense that has a pretty immense amount of power. Like they're a pretty scary team. They're gonna have days where they go out there and they strike out a ton, but at the same time, there is a lot of power in this lineup from top to bottom, from both sides of the plate. Do you want to talk about I'm assuming you don't want to talk about the Tigers pitching. So let's unless you do, but assuming you don't, where are you at on the White Sox bats today?
Yeah, this is going to be a fun team to stack this shortened season because, like you mentioned, so much power, a lot of strikeouts. Like I think they're always going to be a team if you've got a good strikeout pitcher going up against them or someone that gives up a ton of homers or something. They're kind of always going to be relevant on the slate, and you're getting good prices on, especially Moncada if he leads off at 4,500. Eloy Jimenez if he's going to get some at bats against Daniel Norris, the lefty. At 4,200 batting second. And then Luis Robert, 4,500. I like him a lot, batting sixth. He always pops up well for on Alex's projection. So he's a guy I've played a lot of and had some success playing. So I like the White Sox stack here. I'm a little bit surprised that their run total is under 5. I wonder if that gets up later in the day.
I was also surprised by that. They do have right now in our top stacks tool one of the highest projected aggregate ownerships, 10.8%. But they also have one of the higher top stack probabilities. So it's not a big disparity there. I think it's a pretty interesting team to look at. The only thing is if you're someone that when you stack, you're looking for the platoon advantage. The only concern, Jake, is we don't know if Norris is going to go 3 innings. You know, if Fulmer comes in and pitches maybe an inning and a couple plate appearances in the second, and then Norris comes in, gets once through the rotation or through the lineup, and then you've got another righty. It's just tough to know that if there's a lefty you really like, how many times through the rotation or through the lineup is he going to be seeing another lefty? And I think that's the only concern with the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, it's always tough to know how deep these guys are actually going to go, and they can always get blown up and go 7 hitters or something when they're supposed to go 3 or 4 innings. But yeah, I can't really get behind Norris. Obviously, can't get behind Fulmer if he's the opener here. But I don't think either of them are very scary. So certainly not getting me off the White Sox stack here. I did notice though, Detroit's getting a lot of ownership on DraftKings, their bats. What do you think about that? Like, they've got a high chance of being top value, but right now the most over-owned stack on DraftKings for today.
Yeah, I saw that as well. And I've said this a lot, not to be generic, but Dallas Keuchel is just a pitcher I usually do not roster, and someone I prefer not to play guys against. He does a very good job of limiting home runs. I know last year he coughed up a little bit more, but he settled down later in the season and started looking like the same guy he's been over the years. He's not going to get a lot of swings and misses. Swinging strike rate over the past couple seasons has been sitting around 8%. This year it's at 9.9%, which is better, but it's still very early and too soon to tell. When you look at the contact numbers, though, he's just number one. He's not somebody that's going to give up an immense amount of hard contact, but more than anything, he gets so many ground balls. So last year had a 60% ground ball rate. This year, 57% ground ball rate. You're not going to put the ball in the air very often against Dallas Keuchel. So while you will make contact, he's just not somebody that gives up a ton of hard hit power in the air. And I think to me, that's a reason to stay away from them, especially, Jake, if they're going to be this popular. This is strictly because they are very cheap. And I can't help but wonder, who are we dying to pay up for at pitcher that makes it so we have to get to these Tiger bats against a good southpaw in Keuchel?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out that same thing, or maybe we just anticipate them being kind of filler stacks or like 4/4s with Coors bats. Like there's some really expensive Coors bats. A couple guys over $6K in Arenado and Story. So maybe that's the reason why they're getting popular. But yeah, I'm scrolling through these pictures and there's not even someone very expensive. Like
that's Corbin, what I mean. No.
10-4, but he's not like in that great of a spot. I don't think he's barely a favorite.
I know.
So yeah, that's a little bit puzzling. I wonder if they'll come down maybe a little bit, or if, like I said, just everyone's jamming in the expensive bats, mid-tier pitching, and you kind of need 2 or 3 guys to fill out the rest of your lineup, and they project as decent values.
It's possible. They're very cheap. CJ Cron, I think, is a good option. Presumably batting cleanup. He absolutely crushes left-handed pitching. And like I said, Keuchel's not really the guy that's going to make life easy on anyone. But if I'm going to go anywhere here, I think batting and out of the 4 hole makes some sense here. He's just always had such incredible success against southpaw pitching. The whole team is very cheap. There's no denying that. But 4.2 implied total. Keuchel does not give up a lot of power. Maybe you're right that it's just picking and choosing pieces here as fillers and stacks. And they're probably going to pop up a bunch and crunch. Like if in optimal lineups, I'm assuming maybe you get 1 or 2 Tigers just because they're so cheap. But that's about all I can get to. And I don't really see the value in full out going heavy on Tiger stacks. But I guess we'll see. Ultimately, if this was a slate with a lot of expensive pitching, I think we'd be having an entirely different conversation. But we're not. So let's talk about Washington and the New York Mets, because that's the next game on the schedule. Corbin is the highest priced pitcher on DraftKings by a mile at 10-4, and also on FanDuel at 10-8. Way more expensive than Kyle Gibson, who is the next highest priced guy. Corbin's 10-4, and like I said, 10-7 or 10-8 against the Mets, and you just kind of alluded to it there. He's a very good pitcher, right? His numbers this season have been impressive. It's very early on, but he is striking batters out at a 34% clip. He's faced 47 total batters, has a 12% swinging strike rate, called plus swinging strike rates at 31%. So there are some good numbers there, no question. He's solid. His xFIP is through the floor as well, very early. But the Mets don't exactly make for a pristine matchup here. And you said it. It's minus 116 on the money line for the Washington Nationals. It should be a very close game. And you're paying a premium for Patrick Corbin, who's going to get a lot of strikeouts, you would think. But he's also going to face his fair amount of quality right-handers in this lineup.
Yeah, that's the concern, is just the quality of righties. Like Pete Alonso, 4,600. Wilson Ramos, one of the better hitting catchers, especially against left-handed pitching for a number of years. And then, like, I know Dozier is not great anymore, or even very good, but probably not a guy that is a great strikeout target, batting in the bottom lineup. There's going to be some chances for Corbin to get strikeouts, especially if Conforto and Dominic Smith are in. Like, he's striking out 40% of lefties going back to the start of last season. So he's awesome. It doesn't look like he's over-owned, which I'm a little bit surprised about, especially with kind of the Tigers ownership that we alluded to in some of these other cheap teams. So, I mean, I think he's fine, but he's not someone I'm just jamming into my lineup. There's no one in his price range either. So you can't really pivot off of the 30% ownership on Corbin. So I just think he's fine. If I can get up to him, that's great. He's the number one raw point option, I think. But it's not like he's a guy that I have to have in even like 50% of my lineups.
Right now, you got him coming into third highest ownership on DraftKings, not just of pitchers, but of anybody. And then on FanDuel, Corbin is much lower down, actually a lot lower down, still one of the top 3 or 4 owned pitchers. And then on our sponsor, Yahoo, Corbin is coming in at the second highest price. $51 on Corbin is quite a bit of money, I must say. Like if you're, and you kind of just mentioned it as well, if you're paying for Corbin, you have to really like him here. I get paying up for pitching, and oftentimes it makes sense when you've got a very solid option. But I think it also depends on whether or not his ownership is going to be sky high. If it is, and he's competing against several other pitchers for the highest ownership on the slate, then I'm going to have less interest in him and look to go elsewhere, especially on the night where you have a bunch of teams with implied totals well above 5. And as you heard me say, $51 on Yahoo, sponsor of the MLB Strategy Show. It is a site that has done a very good job getting that DFS product out there, getting great contests. Can't wait for football season to roll around. Get a ton of action over there during the NFL season. But they also, if you haven't played on Yahoo in a while, they have the CSV uploads now. That was a huge thing that they added not too long ago. MME contest. And if you're trying to play multiple lineups, that has made the biggest difference. Before having to hand make them, even 50 or 20 was a pain in the ass for sure. But the CSV upload now makes life way easier. CSV edit features as well if you're playing a ton of lineups. And you get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points. You remember it, baby, them YSRPs by signing up and using the promo code Awesemo. So if you haven't done so yet, if you haven't checked out Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports yet, do so. Get up to $30 free in Yahoo Sports rewards points, YSRPs. It's as good as cash to be used on the site to play and win real money, right? Just because it's called Yahoo Sports rewards points, YSRPs, doesn't mean that it doesn't put you in business to enter real contests to win real money on the site. Just use that promo code Awesemo when you sign up. AWESEMO, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, the sponsor of the MLB Strategy Show. Got to get them YSRPs, Jake, while they're on the
right.
page.
They're even running some no management fee contests for today. So it looks like the MLB one is at it's a little bit later lock, but it's about half filled. The NBA one is almost filled up for the $3 price point. They have a 25 cent for NBA as well. So not only are you playing against a little bit weaker competition, I think you should always play smaller sites, and it's something I've been doing more and more of in various sports. And so, yeah, can't wait for football with the bigger prizes, but it's still a great place to build your bankroll. If you can get a little bit of overlay plus the no management fee contest, there's a lot of things to take advantage on.
Absolutely. And I know I'm probably not supposed to say this, but for those of you that are new to a site like that, no management fee equals break. So they call it management fee over at Yahoo, but essentially they're taking nothing from some of these contests, which means everything that's paid in by the players gets paid out back to the players. So it's a win-win situation for sure, where other sites are collecting pretty heavy management fee contests or management fees on every single contest. What about Steven Matz? He's another guy that I think you would agree, Jake, has shown many glimpses of, big success, but has really struggled with right-handed power. Heavy right-handed lineups have given him a lot of trouble over the years. And as a lefty, you need to be able to set down opposite-handed batters at a pretty high clip. I look at the projected lineup for the Washington Nationals, and no, it's not nearly as formidable as it was last year or the year before. That's understood. But you're still looking at probably 7 righties in this lineup today.
Yeah, I think the thing with Matz is that he's an okay pitcher. He gets a ton of respect from Vegas. I'm always surprised at the low total.
It is interesting, isn't it? Oh, never gets shit on by Vegas.
It's weird. So it makes me think he's kind of better than what he is, and then worse when he gets blown up. So he's just kind of a okay pitcher, 22.5% K rate against righties. He does give up a lot of hard contact. It looks like maybe last year he fixed something with the stolen bases, because I know that was a huge thing. He was
most Mets pitchers, if you remember, had that issue.
Yeah, so he only gave up
Syndergaard. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, he only gave up 9 last year. So maybe it just ran hot or something, but only 2 caught stealing. So people aren't attempting, it's not just a free base off him anymore. And I think that was kind of the case with, like you said, a bunch of the Mets guys. So that's encouraging. 7,300. It's not a great lineup to pick on. You got a couple of really low strikeout guys in Howie Kendrick and Kurt Suzuki as well. Soto has been back for a few days now. It's just not a great matchup. If he's going to be completely unowned compared to some of the chalkier options that we'll talk about in this range, then yeah, I think you can get to a little bit of Matz. He's at 5% right now. and he saves you $1,300 off of Kyle Gibson, who's going to be 6 or 7 times the ownership. So in that sense, I think he's probably at least in play with a 4.4 implied total against. Definitely not one of my favorite guys right now, though.
No, but I think you're right to definitely point out the ownership here. It's a pretty big discrepancy between a lot of these other guys. But I'll tell you one thing, you're right. The stolen bases seem to be something he's fixed. The home runs have not. He's already allowed 5 home runs and 52 batters faced to all right-handed hitters. That to me is concerning. A 320 ISO really early, like 3.75 home runs per 9. Again, it's very early. It's only 3 starts. But this is something I really would have liked to have seen Matt fixed, but he hasn't because he doesn't get enough ground balls. He gives up a ton of hard contact. And here he is sitting there with 5 long balls allowed and just around 50 batters faced. That concerns me. There's no doubt about it. So let me throw this to you. I'm with you that he could be a good low-owned option that I wouldn't go heavy on. I don't think you ever want to just load up on Steven Matz against a good, disciplined Washington team with 7 righties. But on the other side of this, knowing that he has been someone that has homer problems, those homer problems are exasperated this season as well with 5 allowed already, facing Washington last time, Boston, and Atlanta, multiple home runs allowed in each of his last 2 starts. Do you have any interest in the Washington Nationals today, who right now are garnering right around the middle of the pack in ownership?
Yeah, there's specific bats. I mentioned Kendrick and Suzuki. I kind of like as additions to a stack. So if you want to play Soto lefty for 5K, that's not going to be a very popular option. And you get to play one of the better hitters in a stack. And we know, like with the stack, you're playing against a starting pitcher, but you're hoping they get knocked out early anyways. And then maybe the other hand, another handed pitcher comes in. So I like the idea of playing Soto if you are going to this national stack. They're a little bit over-owned, but it's nothing where like they're just good values and they're not that good of raw point plays and everyone's just hammering them in. They're still, like you said, middle of the pack, decent value guy in Nats that gives up home runs. So yeah, I can see myself getting to some Nats on the other side as well.
Okay. Thoughts on Mets bats before we move on?
It's a decent sized slate. I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to target Corbin here. He seems to be kind of in a tier of his own as far as pitchers go today, like in terms of real life. So not really looking to stack up against him or really one-off against him either.
All right. Yeah, and just to add, when it comes to the Washington bats, I do think it's nice to look towards guys that do have that power because that is, we said it, but that is Matt's primary weakness. And if he's not allowing as many, I still like speed guys against him. I refuse to believe that he's completely solved all of those problems. It's a huge improvement from 2018, no doubt. But I'm not there yet that, just overnight he has become someone that you can't run on. So speed guys and power guys, that's usually what you're looking for anyway. But I think it's even more important in a matchup with Matz, who's actually a pretty good pitcher, that you try and lock into those guys. Let's talk about Tampa Bay and Boston. Ryan Yarbrough is towing the rubber for Tampa Bay today. Colton Brewer, the probable opener. Have you seen who the long guy is supposed to be yet for Boston?
I haven't. Man, DK doesn't even have anyone listed, so
I don't see it. Yeah, I see on DraftKings. I saw that they had Colton Brewer as the probable star opener, but that's about it. So I think we're gonna have to wait on that. We didn't have a line on that game for for a while, but the Rays. Here's one thing: the Rays have a 5.2 run total, 4.4 for the Boston Red Sox. So. Whoever's out there, Vegas has the Tampa Bay Rays almost a full run higher today against the Sox in Boston.
Yeah, and outside of Meadows, they're super cheap. So this usually happens with the cheaper teams. They get a little bit more popular maybe than they should be, but like 3, 4, 5, Diaz, Choi, and Yoshi, all mid threes on DraftKings with a large total. It'll depend if like who actually ends up being the guy that comes in after Brewer. That might change some things, but apparently Vegas isn't too worried about that with this big total in Fenway. It's really hot there. It's 85 and looks like humid as well, which is also going to help the ball fly out of there. Hopefully, if you're stacking up the Rays. I like Tampa. Maybe not as much as the field right now, but looking at where I got to them, my exposures, they're probably like my third or fourth highest owned stack right now.
Okay, yeah. Right now, coming in with the second highest ownership in our top stack tool. I do think that makes sense. The biggest factor here is just that they're not very expensive. Meadows and then Brandon Lau, you have two guys that you're gonna pay a little bit for, and then the salaries fall off a cliff. Of the projected lineup, there isn't a single hitter under or above 3,600 from the 3 through 9, at least for what we're projecting, which is obviously very appealing, and it makes it way easier to actually pay for the two guys up top, assuming you would want them in your lineup. I'm not sure why you wouldn't. Just want to throw something out here. We just had a message from somebody in chat. T. McBee said, Brewer said yesterday he's prepping for the bulk roll today, so he might see 3 innings as a non-traditional opener into a regular bullpen game. Yeah, I guess we'll find out. I still haven't seen anything in terms of relief afterwards, and it's worth paying attention to. But yeah, if he goes, I don't. The truth is, I don't even know what bulk roll means anymore. Jay, does bulk roll mean he gets through the lineup once? Does it mean he goes 4 innings? Because that's not even an opener. I'm not even sure.
So it looks like, maybe they're just going with a bullpen game. Like you get an inning here, one guy gets a couple innings, and they just kind of try to piece together a 9-inning bullpen game. So bulk, 3 innings, maybe 4. Probably not someone you can consider though. They're just better options for a little bit more expensive than Brewer. I know he's basically min salary, but
not interested. At AAA, we could go back to 48 innings at AAA in 2018, because last year he was all over the map. He threw a little bit for the Padres up in the major leagues, and then 54 innings for the Red Sox. He didn't start any games, made 58 appearances in relief. He was out of the bullpen to average less than a strikeout per inning, 20% K rate. Those numbers are not going to do much for you, especially in a starter role where you likely see them come back down. And in the appearances he's made this year, so he's gone 29 pitches, 44, 31, 19, and 12. He did throw 2 2/3 innings on the 28th against the Mets, but his last 2 appearances have been 19 and 12. So, I can't imagine. It's very tough for me to believe, even whether or not he's been prepping for this, it's tough for me to believe that Brewer goes more than like 40, 50 pitches.
Yeah, no thanks there. I mean, I'm always looking to play some mid-salary pitchers and load up on bats, especially in a Coors slate. But I think your upside is just so capped that it's hard to imagine him even getting to double digits if things go really well.
Do you have any interest in Boston bats against Yarbrough, who's really not a bad lefty at all? I don't think he gets enough credit.
Yeah, I mean, JD against a lefty. That's about as good of a play as you can get, especially a lefty that doesn't strike out a ton of hitters. So just him, man, this Red Sox lineup, it is so much different than what they've been the last few years. I looked like the couple times that I've had shows so far, just not very impressive outside of Devers and
really
and Bogarts.
It's the middle. It's the 2, 3, 4 spots, and then it falls off a lot. You remember real early in the season, everyone was clamoring to get on some of these cheaper bats like Michael Chavis, and to a large extent, what you're seeing is that appeal has largely worn off. And even man, have you actually looked at how some of these guys are producing this season? I'm talking about some of the bigger name bats like Martinez and Benintendi. It's very early, granted, and every game means a whole lot more, but they have really struggled collectively as a team to do anything of note.
Yeah. Again, like I haven't paid too much attention to MLB so far. But I just figured like Boston would be a pretty decent team, like have a decent lineup, even without Betts there, because they were one of the deeper teams for a few years when they did have them. But, maybe it's just Chavis and Vasquez don't look good. They're as good, and Bradley without Betts in the lineup. Maybe he's that big of a difference maker. Instead, you have to lead off with Kevin Pillar, who isn't terrible, but it just makes this lineup look way more watered down. And I don't even see Benintendi isn't expected to play tonight. It looks like
I don't see him in the I don't see him in the projected lineup either. I mean, he could, but
right.
Yeah, they've really struggled. Like JD Martinez on the season, again, only 56 plate appearances, not a single home run though. He's just largely struggled across the board, struck out 15 times in 56 at bats. So, it's not gone well for them. But if I could say one thing is that they have been good against lefties, nearly a 200 collective ISO against lefties this season. Yarbrough, obviously a southpaw pitcher. So it's not the craziest idea to have some interest there, but ultimately, I think Yarbrough is a pretty good pitcher, and Vegas tells a story here too, Jake. 4.4 run implied total for Boston. That's not very high. Last year in this spot, it would have been like 5.3 for the Red Sox.
Yeah, that was the first thing that made me like, all right, who's starting for this Boston team? Who's expected to play? Not even 4.5 runs in Fenway against a lefty. Like, that never happens unless the lefty is like a guy like Corbin or one of the better guys, Snell, someone like that. But yeah, this minuscule total says a lot about this lineup.
All right, Minnesota, Milwaukee. You've got Adrian Hauser, Randy Dobnak on the mound. Adrian Hauser's been good. If you dive a little bit deeper into his numbers, though, you're gonna find out that not exactly one of the higher upside pitchers that you can consistently rely on. To give you strong strikeout numbers. He's done a good job in a number of areas this season, particularly against right-handed bats. And last year you saw something pretty similar. Actually, if you were to pull up Adrian Hauser and look at his expected WOBA since the beginning of last year, he's got an xWOBA of 271 against righties, which is very good, but a swinging strike rate below 10%. And then against lefties, he's got a 309 xWOBA, which is right around league average. That's manageable. 11% swinging strike rate. So he's not a bad pitcher, and I think he's proven that to us. But he is also getting up there in price now. And not only that, Adrian Hauser has a pretty daunting task going up against the Minnesota Twins. But here's another one that surprised me a little bit. I'm sure you saw it, Jake. 4.2 implied total for the Twins, 4.4 for the Milwaukee Brewers. I did think this one would be higher.
I'm surprised the Brewers aren't way higher against Dominic. Like, I can't believe guys don't just light him up every start. They always talk about it in the Twins broadcast. Like, he was an Uber driver at this time last year. Nothing against Uber drivers, but then he's pitching in the majors and like he's going 4, 5, 6 innings every start. And he easy for me to say from my couch, but yeah, I can't believe guys aren't hitting him more.
Look, you're not offending Uber drivers. It's just strange that you're driving an Uber one day and the next day you're going 7 innings at the major league level.
Yeah, they just got this guy out of nowhere. Yeah, so credit to him. I mean, 7,500 on DK, I would have never thought he would get there. But yeah, really, really low total here for the Brewers. I'm interested in the Twins bats just because they're stacked. Number one, they hit a ton of home runs. They don't strike out that much. Like, there's guys that strike out, like Cruz and Sano against righties, and Garver will strike out against righties, and Buxton just, you could do a lot worse than Buxton as your ninth hitter. but he's still not great. So I think Hauser will be able to get some strikeouts here. Probably not worth the 8,400. Doesn't go super deep into games. And then I'm looking at the kind of his splits. So he strikes out 25% of righties, 25% of lefties, but the whip is really concerning against lefties. He's under 1 against righties going back to the start of last season. He's at 1.54 against lefties, 40% hard contact against lefties. And so like starting with Kepler, Rosario, Polanco, and then Arias, who never strikes out. I could see this one getting away from him. So despite the low Twins total, I think they're going to be a pretty low owned stack, it looks like. I really like them pretty much whenever they're low owned. And right now they're actually our most under owned stack.
Yeah, so much power in that lineup. I'm with you. I still can't get past the Randy Dobnak stuff. That like he has a 68% ground ball rate this year. I think he might be getting a little bit lucky. His strand rate is 92.3%. Batters have a 205 BABIP against him. He hasn't allowed a home run in 15 innings. He's striking out 14% of batters and walking 7%. I don't know. Call me crazy, but regression may be on the horizon. Does that – okay, so you like the Twins. They're not getting a ton of attention at all right now. Actually, virtually no attention for the Twins. Much higher top stack probability than their ownership, as you mentioned. What about Milwaukee before we move on? Is there anything here against the Lyft driver? Sorry, Uber driver?
Yeah, Uber. Or at least that's what they said. Maybe he does both. You know, some people do both. They got 2 stickers and 3 stickers.
They bust their ass. I've had Uber drivers where they're out like 70 hours a week.
Yeah.
Switching off between Lyft and Uber, picking up who's ever there. They got crushed with this coronavirus, though.
I know. It's too bad. So hopefully they can get it picked back up here.
Or just become a professional pitcher, you know? I mean,
yeah, there's always that option. Yeah, you can just go play for the Twins. They're always looking for some innings eaters.
At least could use somebody. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like a pitcher like that, a guy with a 14% K rate, who is definitely, he's getting a little bit lucky and like he looks like he should get hit all the time. I guess, you got Sogard and Arias in the same game, 2 guys that are the worst to face. But yeah, like these guys are going to make contact against Dobnak. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And you've got, Yelich at 5,300. Everyone knows what he's capable of, but I like Keston Hero for 4,800. And then you've got some guys with some power towards the middle and the end of this lineup. You Smoke, Garcia, Logan Morrison's 3,100, just kind of a pretty good value there. So actually, for an 8.5 total game, I actually like bats on both sides. I'm talking myself into some Brewers as well.
I'm with you. Dobnak's zone contact rate is 93%. Like that's just nuts.
Not too much deception. The good old Randy Dobnak. Have you seen how he looks too? I mean, his looks alone warrant the $7,500 price. This guy's got one of the best mustaches I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's intense, and it's super lopsided. It's so lopsided, too. Unless his head's tilted. He's got one side of the handlebar mustache coming down a good 3/4 inches lower than the other side. Just go. Do you have DraftKings pulled up by any chance?
Yes, I do. Here we go.
All right, go click on his card and just it's down way further than the other side.
They didn't tell him before he was getting his picture taken, like quick razor, just
Randy, touch that up a little bit.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But yeah, I can see why people would like him. By the way, before we move on, I know we're going a little bit slow here. Just to put things into perspective, take somebody like Aaron Nola, who his swinging strike rate this year, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's insane. It's like 18%, Jay, which is nuts for him. But if you put it in perspective, his zone contact rate is 77.8%. Overall contact rate is 64%. Now, I don't think either of those are sustainable. They'll come back. But just on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, you got Dobnak at 93% and 81%. So when you talk about liking bats from this game, one rule of thumb in baseball is And I know he is getting a lot of ground balls, but one rule of thumb is if somebody's giving up this much contact, good things can happen. It's baseball. Put the ball in play. For the batters, better things can happen for them than the pitchers. So I'm with you on that one. You want to move on?
Let's do it.
All right, Colorado, Arizona. You had already discussed some of the high prices here, at least alluded to them earlier. John Gray, Robbie Ray, two guys I love and just continuously let me down. I am shocked by the projected Robbie Ray ownership. I feel like that has to come down. Maybe it won't. I don't know. On DraftKings, we've got him projected really high. Listen, he has good stuff. He even apparently changes mechanics heading into the season. And like last start, for example, against Houston, right? That I tweeted about it. That was a miserable start for him. Miserable matchup. Houston never walks or never strikes out against lefties. They always walk. Highest walk rate, lowest K rate since the beginning of last year. Cheaters or not, right? Like they have really talented bats from the right side of the plate. They will beat the shit out of left-handed pitching, and that's what they did to Robbie Ray. The interesting thing is he still gets a lot of strikeouts, Jake. It's just at what cost? And when you come into the altitude in Colorado, one of the biggest concerns you have is depending on what's in your arsenal, you're going to have to fine tune that to not get beat up where balls don't break as much as they would elsewhere. Fortunately for Ray, and I'll turn this over to you, he does throw his slider 38% of the time. It's the most he's ever thrown it in his career. And 36% of the time against righties with a whiff rate of, I lost it. A whiff rate of 19% almost. He gets a lot of whiffs against righties. Can he come out of this matchup, utilizing a heavy slider usage without getting crushed? Or is this ownership on Robbie Ray preposterous?
Yeah, at first I was like, there's no way I'm getting to that ownership on Ray. But I actually, I ran my 150, I would run it if lock was in 10 minutes. And I got to 26% of Ray. Talk about the physics of it. Yeah, slider isn't the worst thing to throw in Coors because it can move even more and you're not going to lose speed on it. Whereas a curveball, it's just going to hang more. And that can get you into issues against guys like Story and Arenado. So yeah, those guys are awesome plays. Colorado bats are great plays. But everybody knows that. And it looks like everybody's kind of in on playing some pitchers in Coors these last couple seasons when they're cheap and they get a lot of strikeouts because in a 1-game sample, Ray could strike out 10 batters here. And oftentimes it's not the case with any $6,300 pitcher. So I don't mind the ownership. I don't think at that ownership, even if it's at 20%, I'm going to make a major stand on Ray. It just seems like a really large gap of probabilities for Ray and then the Colorado bats here. So for baseball, high variance sport, I think you have to have exposure on both sides if you play kind of a diversified approach to your lineups.
And a lot of this is because they're so expensive, but Colorado bats at the current time, it's still early. We will get updates. Colorado bats are going under owned right now.
Yeah.
They're so expensive.
That's God. Really appealing, right? They're just, so this is why the Tigers were popular. Yeah. I'm looking at some of my lineups here. And if you don't go to a couple Tigers bats with your 5-man Colorado stack, you're really dumpster diving. You can play some Mariners or maybe some San Francisco Giants, but yeah, so this is the reason why. And it's the Coors bats, specifically the Colorado side. So maybe
they're so expensive.
Yeah, maybe
Arenado $6,300.
So nuts. Are they pricing guys like that? I haven't played every day.
This is unique in that, I remember once where Tulowitzki was
$7K.
You remember that?
Yeah. That was when I first started playing. I was like, this is impossible.
But generally speaking, usually it's the high 5K range, like Arenado 59, Story 58, Blackman 5,600. It's definitely possible that you see these guys get up there, but just to reference what we've seen from Arenado all season long, this is the first time he has eclipsed $6,000. 5,900 is the most he's been. Trevor Story $6,100 on DraftKings. This is he was 6,100 last game, but that's the highest he's been. So it looks like these guys are at the top of their salary range right now.
Yeah, and it makes sense against the lefty and Coors to have Story and Arenado be this price, but also like those should be guys you should be trying to jam in, because even if Ray has a good start, he's probably given up a home run or two in Coors more often than not. And those are your best candidates to do that.
All right. John Gray has struggled, and he is, $7,000 on DraftKings. I really like John Gray, and I guess it's time for me to give up on him. I don't want to, but I feel like that time is near. He's struck out 3 or fewer batters in all 3 games. Granted, one was in Texas, but the Rangers have stunk this year. That lineup is pretty putrid, and the Rangers Stadium isn't the same as it was before. Then 2 of them came at home, but against San Diego and the San Francisco Giants, like he has not exactly had juggernauts every 5 days that he's got to go up against. And, if you pull up some of John Gray's numbers from this season, it's still very early, understandably so. So, keep that in mind. But his swinging strike rate, 7%. Called plus swinging strike rate is 25.9%. He's striking same-handed bat. He's faced 25 batters, righties. He struck 12% of them out, and 9.8% of lefties he struck out in 41 batters faced. That is a massive concern no matter where you're pitching.
Yeah, we've always loved Gray because of the strikeouts and, the missed bats. And, yeah, he played in Coors, but he would never be owned, and he would still be okay in a lot of his Coors starts. You mentioned the, kind of underlying stuff, but big total against them, 5.5 runs. And then the Diamondbacks aren't striking out as much as I would have thought. They're at the 3rd lowest rate against righties for the season, just 20.4%. Their WRC plus kind of stinks. They're at 80, but if you're not going to be getting strikeouts from John Gray, maybe he's just not the same guy. So what we've seen in previous seasons. I'm more looking at the Arizona bats, but they're cheap and they're in Coors, so they're just going to be popular. That's just going to be the way it goes.
Man, John Gray's velocity is down about 2 miles per hour. Slider usage is down. He's throwing that change up a lot. Trying to see what the hell's going on with him. Change up's getting smoked. Slider's getting smoked. His whiff rate on the slider this year is 15%, down almost 8% from last season. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with him. This is something I'd like to look into a little bit more, and I will be on Live Before Lock tonight with Adam Sherrod. So that's something we can discuss more. But man, it looks ugly for John Gray right now. I'm staying away from that. If you already talked about it, I was researching John Gray here, so forgive me, and we can move on. But did you talk about did you talk about Diamondback stack yet, or did you just talk about Gray?
I kind of just mentioned Diamondback stack. I don't know if there's anything overly interesting to say about them. Maybe Calhoun looks like a decent option at 4,100, but I just mentioned that Arizona is cheap. They're the road team. They're going into Coors, 5.5 run total. Really good value, but that's going to come with quite a bit of ownership. They're right now our highest owned.
How can they be so cheap?
I don't know. I always think I have the DK algorithm figured out, and I just never do. So
yeah, like the Giants were 5,800. Like Yastrzemski and a few of these other guys were up close to 6K. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. Arizona's getting ownership, but I don't think it's an excessive amount of ownership either. 13% is really not crazy, especially given John Gray's troubles. So I like that. They're just too cheap. I mean, if you can get a Coors stack in, I'm not exactly sure what the disincentive would be to get, or the incentive to get away from that would be when they're this cheap. By the way, wind's blowing out to left center at 13 miles per hour, 91 degrees at first pitch and Coors. Just throwing that out there for you guys. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Not bad. Yeah. And sure, the Diamondbacks don't have a 6-run total, but it's at 5.4, and John Gray's putting everything in play. So, yes, please. I have some interest in that. Last thing I'll say about this, John Gray's getting ground balls, but he's also giving up an excessive amount of hard contact. So I think that ownership might even be too low on Arizona. Let's keep it moving here. Before we do, hit that thumbs up. If you haven't done so yet, it really does help us out greatly to combat this YouTube algorithm here. It helps us get exposure out there and get new faces to the channel. If you are new, welcome. Glad to have you. Subscribe, hit that notification bell if you haven't done so yet, so you always know when new content's going to drop. And if you haven't checked out Awesemo.com, that's where we come from. And that's where we've got the best projections, ownership tools that you can find, the preeminent DFS content out there, because it's developed and used every day by the #1 DFS player in the world, Alex Baker. #1 ranked player, Awesemo himself. He actually uses these tools. He actually builds them himself. We don't just slap his name on them like other sites do. It's the real deal. They're his tools, and they're fantastic. Also, all of our premium content, from articles to the lineup builder, every sport. Jake kills it with NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL coming up. We've got a new fantasy football product, seasonal fantasy football product, which is really awesome. Data-driven, analytically driven fantasy football rankings and projections, and boom and bust tools, so much more. All of this also by Alex. I put a ton of articles out there and did a lot of work on these tools to help develop everything. An awesome strength of schedule tool. But the big thing about this is where the fantasy football community is just completely consumed with groupthink. There's none of that here. It's completely data-driven. And it's $29.95. It includes everything: rankings, projections, sleeper tools, all of the content from our experts, a ton of articles, and the Draft Wingman, which will update team projections in real time based on who you've already drafted. So, and you get $35 free to FFPC, right? So where you can actually play, draft money leagues. It's a great site, $35 in credit. So essentially you sign up for this, you're technically getting $6 free. So you're getting $6 to pay or to sign up for the content here. If you're a DFS fan, though, go to awesemo.com/join. Check out everything we have to offer. I'm pretty certain you'll like it. Check out all the testimonials and screenshots as well before you do. And the last thing before we move on, you scroll to the bottom of awesemo.com/join. You can check out all of the tutorials we have on our most popular and best tools before you dive in. So check that out, awesemo.com/join, and check out that fantasy football product as well. It's a huge win-win, $29.95, but then you immediately get $35 in credit at FFPC to get in there and win some money over there for the 2020 season. All right, Jake, let's keep it moving. Texas and Seattle. I don't think we need to talk anymore about the Colorado offense. We think we beat that one good enough. Texas and Seattle, Kyle Gibson, Justin Dunn. I'm a huge Kyle Gibson truther for sure, and I actually don't hate what I've seen from him this year. His first start, 3 runs and an error in the first inning. He was a bit sloppy, but gave up no earned and then shut him down for the rest of that game. Too many base runners, but still. 9 strikeouts last time out. Tough Oakland team. They put up 3 runs, a couple home runs, but 9 Ks in 6 innings. Now you've got the easiest matchup he'll face yet with the Seattle Mariners, but it isn't going unnoticed. Kyle Gibson certainly getting ownership across the board.
Yeah, Gibson popular, but I think for good reason. You look at where the Mariners are at and strikeout rate 25%, WRC plus well below 100 against righties this season. Just for price per strikeout, I think Gibson's one of your better options. So the only thing I'm worried about with Gibson is just, am I playing too popular of a total lineup with him? He looks like one of the better options. He can go pretty deep, strong favorite. He's got everything you're looking at. Just maybe he's owned a little bit too high. But a high-owned pitcher isn't necessarily the end of the world when you've got a bunch of teams we've already mentioned that we like their bats, a bunch of low-owned teams that we like their bats. So I think I'm going to be able to get different enough with Gibson that I'm happy with whatever Gibson I get.
Yeah, I like him a lot, obviously. But no, I think he's priced reasonably. It's not insane against Seattle. The numbers bear that out. And there's actually upside with Gibson, which is really what I care about. I know his swinging strike rate hasn't been great, but he's getting a ton of called strikes to start the season off, which is important to me. When you start missing bats and getting those called strikes worked in there, you're going to start to see great results. 64% ground ball rate. His xFIP right now is 296. It's very early in the year, but just kind of to drive the point home that Kyle Gibson has, through his first 2 starts, he's pitched well, and he's gotten a little bit unlucky as well. Outside of those 2 home runs, which, aren't luck at all. But 3.7 implied total for the Mariners, one of the lowest on the slate. Gibson, definitely one of my favorite pitchers here. What do you make of Seattle with Justin Dunn here going up against a Rangers team that has been wildly underproductive?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I got to any Justin Dunn. I actually did. I got to about double the field. Now, ownership is going to change by the time he gets a lock. Maybe he creeps up there a little bit. As people get more enamored with the Coors bats and such. But you can you can rack up strikeouts against this Rangers team. Maybe Dunn isn't a phenomenal strikeout pitcher or anything like that. But he's just cheap. And I think he's pretty stretched out too. So I just used the projections on the site and I got to a decent amount of him. It looks like in the top pitcher tool as well, he's getting basically no love, but he's got a really good chance of being a top 2 value. So that's something I add in to try to filter out some of these lineups that are going to be more popular. And it looks like he's just getting no love at all. And so I'm getting to a little bit of Dunn here.
Okay. Yeah. And both of his matchups came against the Angels, who haven't been stellar, but also don't strike out at a particularly high clip. The Rangers aren't striking out a ton this year, but I do expect that. And I know that strikeouts are something that you'll see. They come into focus a lot quicker than other stats, but I can't help but look at this Rangers team and be very, very underwhelmed by them. 266 weighted on base average, 62 WRC plus, and 306 plate appearances against righties this year. 62.
That's miserable.
That is really, really bad. So is it crazy to think that Justin Dunn, who threw 76 pitches last time out, can put up somewhat decent numbers? No, I don't think it is. He needs to limit the walks for sure. That has been a big issue for him, and his whip is through the ceiling. But against Texas, it's not crazy. If you're forced to go super cheap, I would definitely rather go there than like Colton Brewer or Logan Webb. I can tell you that much. But. Yeah.
So those are the other names that I was just looking at. Like maybe as kind of a pivot to Ray, you get an extra really good upgrade, $1,200 difference, as well as the ownership difference, which is about like Dunn is 1/5 of the ownership basically of Ray right now. So
I really don't have a ton of interest in bats here. Joey Gallo, though, batting in the middle of this order is always worth considering. Just platoon advantage against Dunn. That to me is appealing. Gallo's already, four home runs on the young season. He's one of the best power bats in the league, maybe the best power bat in the league when it comes to just raw home run hitting power. Not super stoked about a stack for Texas here. They've just really struggled, and I think a lot of that is because they aren't particularly talented, but Dunn has allowed 3 home runs already through his first 7 innings. And man, Joey Gallo's got to be licking his chops coming into a spot like this.
Yeah, so Gallo's probably going to homer, but outside of that, I don't think the Rangers are going to be a staple in my lineups tonight.
Now, me neither. Chu and Rogner Odor, the top of this lineup isn't horrible. If Dunn continues to struggle with power, then I can get behind that. But there's no doubt that Gallo is my favorite option here. Just before we move on, I wanted to see what Yeah, so Dunn at the minor league level didn't really allow much power, but when you don't strike a ton of guys out, a lot of times that will come with the territory. Anything else on this game?
I think I'm good there.
All right, Houston, San Francisco, 3 to go, 6 down. Lance McCullers, Logan Webb. Dude, Lance McCullers, Jake, I swear he was tipping his pitches last time out. I've never seen, and I've watched a lot of Lance McCullers starts because I'm a fan. I have never seen his knuckle curve, which has been his go-to pitch. That is his signature pitch. I've never seen it get hit that bad. Absolutely lit up in that last start. And when you look at his numbers, like his velocity was perfectly fine. He threw that, just pulling this game up on Brooks Baseball, he threw that knuckle curve almost 30% of the time, which is, way less than he's thrown it in years past. His curveball usage is way down. His sinker usage is up. His changeup usage is way up. The Arizona Diamondbacks in that game hit his curveball for a 1200 ISO. What? 1200. I don't even know how that makes sense, but there it is. Like, it got absolutely hammered. And I don't know what's wrong with him.
Yeah, I mean, if it's tipping his pitches, that's something you can fix. So maybe
I'm assuming though, I could be wrong, but he went through the lineup perfectly through the first time, and then gave up 8 runs in the fifth or fourth inning.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I'm more apt to just say that that's a bad start, and maybe he can rebound here against the Giants. 8,200 for a guy that he has great stuff. Like you said, it just seemed way too cheap for me to pass on McCullers here. He should be decently stretched out. He got to the 6th inning in this first game, and he's had one bad start and one really bad start in a row. I don't know. I think I'm just going to go back to the well here with McCullers. Not too scared about these Giants bats. And he's just, if he's not tipping his pitches, or if he's not hurt, like that's way too cheap for him, I think.
Yeah, it is. I'm a little worried, probably a little bit more than you, because he's coming back from a hiatus of a full calendar year. But
yeah, it's scary. Not the game logs don't look too appealing here for McCullers.
Yeah, and it's not even just the game logs though. It's more so that he's throwing the knuckle curve way less than he ever did before, and it's getting hit way harder than it ever did before. So I'm just running through my head of, okay, there's something going on that we don't know about, that this pitch that he doesn't feel as comfortable with this pitch now as he used to. I don't know, but I guess going back to the well with McCullers isn't the worst idea. They have a 3.7 total for the Giants. I get what you're saying. I really do. He didn't want to make excuses last game, but he talked about them opening up the roof in Arizona. I don't know, Jake. It's strange to me. I'll say this much, though. I think this is a start where we should be paying attention, because if he gets lit up again or just has another really rocky start, we're going to have to start digging a little bit deeper into Lance McCullers to see if something's really wrong.
Yeah. I mean, he's always walked a bunch of guys too, and he didn't even walk anyone last start. Just a really weird situation. I'm hoping for my lineups and for the people that are playing McCullers, because there's going to be a lot of them tonight. I think people will talk themselves into him, and he might end up being the most popular pitcher. So then there's more of a conversation for me as far as, all right, do I get to actually where the field's at on him? But yeah, it's a little bit concerning, and you're bringing up some good points here.
Just absolute observations that could be completely off. It probably worth looking into his movement on some of these pitches as well. But the last thing I'll say about him, and this is the one thing I just kind of don't understand, his curveball usage in 2016, 17, and 18 was just shy of 15%, or 50%, that knuckle curve. He threw his knuckle curve more than anyone else in the league. A couple of years it was top 3, but there was a year or two there where it was more than anyone in terms of frequency in the league. His changeup was seldom used, 7%, 11%, 15%. This year, his curveball usage is 32%. His changeup usage is 28%, and his sinker usage is up as well. So I don't know. We'll see. What about Logan Webb on the other side? Houston's got a pretty high total here.
No, I'm good. I'll play Dunn or someone else, or get up to Ray. I don't see much of a reason here to play Logan Webb. The Astros, they're cheaters or whatever, but they still have good players. I know they're not playing well right now. I know Altuve, I don't know what's going on with him. He had 4 errors the other day, which doesn't really matter for DFS, but I'm guessing these guys are still going to be solid, like quality hitters once they settle down. And the 5.8 total makes me just completely off of Webb here.
What do you feel about Houston?
They look like a pretty good pivot off of Colorado. Like if they start creeping up the ownership projections, you can't really play them together. So it's kind of one or the other, Houston or Colorado, based on these expensive prices for Altuve and Bregman especially. But even their secondary guys are kind of expensive, 1 through 6. I don't know. I like the idea of it, but right now they're not even that under-owned. So
yeah, I was
definitely like
surprised.
Colorado more. What's that?
I was a little surprised that their ownership was up there. I thought it'd be lower on a slate like this with Coors Field and some other good spots.
And people think they're broken. So I got to...
Because they can't cheat anymore?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's what do we do with that? I mean, does everybody just take a dive on their team in terms of the player that we expect them to be? Or I don't know. It's hard to say. Dude,
it is really, yes, it's very difficult to try and quantify any of that for sure. All right, so last year at home, the Houston Astros finished, let's see here. Let's see where this shakes out, Jake. They were weighted on base average. They ranked second behind the Rockies by only 0.01, which is crazy given the Rockies play at Coors Field. WRC plus 136 at home. That ranked first by a massive margin. 233 isolated slugging at home. That also ranked first in the league. All right, where do you think they ranked on the road? Do you think they were right around that, or do you think it was a massive drop-off?
I want to say it was a pretty big drop-off.
All right, so Houston with 344 WOBA on the road. That's third best in the league. 211 ISO. It's down. It's not 233, but still. Third best in the league. 114 WRC plus was third best in the league. And a lot of times teams just produce better at home anyway. So
yeah,
if it's just me looking at this and they're top 3 in weighted on base average, power, and WRC plus on the road, I'd venture to say that maybe we're overreacting to this whole cheating thing a little bit in terms of overall production.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Looking at the home road splits, because the accusation, or I guess the truth, is that they were doing it at home. You can't really do that very well.
That's what they were saying, right? They weren't. Didn't they say it was mostly at home?
Yeah, the banging of the trash cans.
Yeah. I don't know. I like Houston bats here. A little bit surprised by the ownership, but Vegas still thinks that they're going to put up a lot of runs.
Mm-hmm.
Not my favorite team. And one of the reasons for that is that you're paying a lot for some of these guys up top, but I still like Coors a little bit more, given that the ownership on that is lower than I thought it would be. But no problem with Houston. What about the Dodgers and San Diego Padres? We got 2 games to go here. Hit that thumbs up while you're in here if you're just walking in the door. Dustin May and Garrett Richards. Garrett Richards, man, all the talent in the world just never comes to fruition, can't stay healthy. He's got knocked around in each of his last 2 starts. To be fair, one of them came at Coors Field, another one came against the Dodgers, and now he's going up against the same Dodgers team today because everyone plays their division 40 times in this 60-game abbreviated season. Any interest in pitching today from Dustin May or Garrett Richards?
So I think Richards. Let's see. I think they're going with Perdomo now. Garrett Richards will start on Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
So they just made that switch while we were.
Oh, you're right. Yep, you're right.
So, don't play Richards, but you guys all know that. I haven't taken a look at it. Yeah, don't maybe play Perdomo against a bunch of power lefties. So the Dodgers stack is really appealing. I think I looked into May a little bit. Like, he's got good strikeout numbers, but as is the question with a lot of Dodgers pitchers, just how deep can he go? He went 82 pitches last game. If you're getting to 82, 85, somewhere around there, most starts, I think $7,700 is a pretty good price for him. The issue is just that the Padres have been really good against righties, not striking out a ton. 124 WRC plus, that is second in the MLB so far. And we're still in some pretty short samples, so this could, they could fall off a cliff. But I think May is fine. He is going to be a big favorite, and probably a bigger favorite now that Perdomo is pitching instead of Richards. But I think I like getting to Gibson and getting more in that range, or dropping down to Ray, or getting to McCullers rather than May.
3.6 run total for the San Diego Padres today. Kind of interesting. I don't know, Dustin. I'm looking at the Padres, and they've actually done it's very early, and I want to keep reinforcing that because I'm looking at 2020 stats now, but they have done a pretty good job of hitting righties. Do you have interest in bats from either side? Like I said, 3.6 run total for the Padres, 5 runs for the Dodgers in LA.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't have those updated totals yet because, the Dodgers basically getting very little ownership when we first ran top stacks. I like them quite a bit.
I still have it at 5, by the way. It appears to be updated. -188 money line for the Dodgers.
Okay, yeah. I'm seeing like -150. So that's the pitching change. That's good to know, though. Bellinger at under 5K, I think, against Perdomo. And then people are saying Cal Quantrill is slated to be the long reliever. It doesn't really matter. I like the Dodgers a ton. Their ownership's going to go up because their total went up, but this is another one of those teams kind of in that Minnesota Twins mold where whenever they're low owned, even if there are like better options on the slate, they're always going to be a team that I think gets boosted, whether it's by the top stack tool or just by me wanting to play the teams with power that are low owned that may not be in the optimal spot, but still a spot where they can succeed. And I think that's one of them here.
All right. Yeah. Perdomo hasn't thrown more than 26 pitches this season in an appearance. So I would not expect him to go particularly deep. Let's close it out. LA and Oakland. So you've got Sean Manaea and Julio Turan. Julio Turan came in with a lot of ownership and let a lot of people down. I was shocked by how popular he was in his first start, even though it was against Seattle. He went 2 2/3 innings, gave up 2 runs, 2 strikeouts, walked 2 batters, threw only 52 pitches. Now he's got a much more difficult matchup against the Oakland Athletics. And then Sean Manaea on the other side against LA. Manaea is another one of those guys that's a good pitcher, but he just doesn't really have that ceiling as far as strikeouts go. I was looking earlier, you go back to the start of last season with Sean Manaea and, some pretty basic strikeout numbers. His swinging strike rate against lefties and righties is not bad, right? It's around 12.5%, but it hasn't exactly translated into the strikeout totals that you need from him. He's $8,800 on DraftKings. The Angels have a fair amount of quality right-handed bats. I can't say I'm in love with pitching here. And then ownership right now, if you look at our ownership tool, you've got Manaea all the way down there around 1%, Tirran at 0.1%. So neither pitcher in this game is getting much love at all.
Yeah, I'm probably passing on these guys for the most part. If you're looking for a reason to play one, I guess, Manaea is coming up a little bit undervalued in the top pitcher tool. So maybe he gets there just on a raw point basis. If he could somehow get to 20 or 21 points and it's a low scoring pitcher slate, which it looks like it's going to be, maybe he ends up in kind of the winning lineup. Tehran, I'm good. Oakland is pretty scary. I guess they don't have a ton of lefty bats. Olsen is the one you're going to want to worry about with Tehran the most, but they just have a lot of quality bats. Laureano probably not going to be in the lineup today. I'm assuming you saw that.
Yeah, he's a lot of people's favorite player now.
Yeah, so we've got him in the projected lineup right now. Maybe it gets appealed and he gets less than the 8 games or whatever precedent they set with Joe Kelly. But yeah, just not a good matchup for Tehran. He's not very good in general. And then Manaea, like a little bit more strikeouts for 8,800. So I don't think this is going to be a game I have a ton of in my exposure at all.
Yeah, and the Angels Park or Angel Stadium was they made some adjustments, brought the wall in a little bit, made it a bit easier to hit home runs, but still just not a great game all in all. The Athletics do have a 5.1 run total, though, which I found kind of interesting. And Julio Tirran has been known to struggle with left-handed power. The thing here, though, is there really aren't projected to be a lot of lefties in this lineup, Jake. Like outside of Matt Olson and Grossman, maybe Tony Kemp, this is not an Oakland team that can load it up with lefties. And it's not that they have to, but I do think they'd be more appealing in the event that they could mix more lefty bats into the lineup against Tirran.
Yeah, coming up a little bit undervalued as well. Oakland's a really high upside team. And maybe people will look at it and be like, all right, yeah, Tirran sucks against lefties and see a bunch of righties in the lineup and avoid them completely. But they're still a pretty high upside team. I don't know that they're in like the Dodgers or Twins category right now, but they're kind of in that next tier for me where if they're low owned, I'm always at least giving a look at Oakland.
Me too. And every time I look at them, they're actually pretty expensive. So they're not Coors price, but they are definitely priced for that upside, which makes them a little bit harder to get to. And I think that's probably why they have a higher top stack probability than their ownership today. Just given that a lot of these guys come in the low 5K range, high 4K range, and you're looking to get to them as a pivot until you realize that they're just as expensive or more expensive than that stack that you're getting off of. So, I like them, but they definitely don't come cheap. They rarely come cheap. And that's where we land. We've got 9 games up, 9 games down. Anything else to close this one or the slate out, Jake, before we head out for the day?
Nothing too crazy. I think there are quite a few, like if you're looking to get away from the chalk, and that will usually pan out in the MLB season, there's some really high upside teams that are going to have low ownership based on what we're showing right now. So good day to mix up a couple of your higher owned guys. Like just don't play the most popular combos. And I think you're going to be good on slates like this where there's not great pitching anywhere.
You'll be back on the NHL strategy show tomorrow, right?
Yes, tomorrow. There's no games tonight.
Yep.
There will be a 4-game slate tomorrow. So
can't wait, man. 2 p.m. today, PGA DFS First Look with Jason, Sal, and Jeff. NBA Live Before Lock, Chris Spags, Ryan will come up around, I don't know what time that is, right before lock. And then at 5:40, MLB Live Before Lock, Adam Scher and myself will take you up to MLB Lock. Then you got the early bird with EMAC and T McB waking you up nice and early tomorrow, or it'll probably post tonight and you can check it out before you pass out. A little preview for tomorrow's MLB slate. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we'll be back with you tomorrow on the MLB Strategy Show and the NBA Strategy Show before it every single day, back to back, every day, Monday through Saturday. We'll see you soon.